way, it's always getting away from the rules and the shoulds and tuning into your child and what their actual individual needs are.
Hi, Kirste here, and welcome to another episode of Table Talk, where we give short answers to tall topics. And joining me this time is midwife, child health nurse and director, big names there, of Wholehearted Family Health, Andrea Fallon. Hi, Andrea, how are you going?
Hi, good, thanks. Nice to be here.
Lovely to have you. Now, thanks for joining us. So what are you going to bring to the table today?
Today we're going to talk about how the sensory system impacts a little one's sleep. Yeah, so quite excited to share this actually, because it's not something that's spoken about very often.
No, not at all. So, I guess from the moment a baby is born, do they have all of their senses?
Yeah, so they do. And there are actually 8 senses, which most people don't know. We all know, well, pretty much I'm sure we all know it's sight, touch, taste, sound, smell. I think I got them all.
Yep.
And then there's another 3. So there's vestibular, which means our movement and balance. There's proprioception, which is like how our muscles and body kind of give us information about what's going on outside of our bodies. So things like force, pressure, and that sense of space. And then there's the internal senses. So, how we feel hungry, thirsty, those kind of things.
And so are babies a bit like adults? Like, are they more sensitive to certain senses than others?
Yeah, so when babies are born, their brains are busy processing all of this information that's coming in. And that, it's kind of like when you have a newborn and you give them a bath and they hate it for the first few weeks.
And then suddenly they just go, hang on, this feels a little bit like something I can remember.
Yeah, so over time they start to get used to it. And that's what happens. They do have to kind of gradually get used to processing information. But they will also start to tell you over the first 12 months what they prefer.
Right.
Because we all have preferences and we all have what we call a sensory profile, where we are sensitive to some things and actually seeking other things. And some things, calm us down, and some things kind of wind us up a bit. And so babies are the same, and they'll let us know over that first year what their preferences are.
And it's hard to sort of figure that out as a new mum or a new parent for the first little while. It's all a little bit, what do I do? What do I do?
Yeah, absolutely.
So how can we become more in tune with our baby's senses, like, discovering all of that?
Yeah, I guess really it's just tuning in and taking notice. Like, what do they seem to be avoiding? What do they seem to be seeking? And what seems to dial them up and what seems to calm them down? Because when they're seeking certain senses or avoiding certain senses, what they're actually doing is they're trying to calm down their nervous system.
Yeah.
They're trying to regulate themselves. And so the idea is we want to give them like that good balance if we can take note, to help them kind of regulate and kind of keep them at this calm sort of level throughout the day.
Because there is that whole thing of where babies can be potentially overstimulated, is that right? And their senses can be overwhelmed, which where we're going is obviously how that affects sleep for babies, because babies, they have to learn it, don't they?
Yeah, well, that's right. So there's definitely a lot of talk out there about overstimulating babies, but I don't think there's as much talk about understimulating babies. And that's another point. And it's interesting because, a lot of people talk about colic and that kind of thing on really younger babies, and no one really knows what colic is. That's a bit of a label that's kind of slapped on there. Yeah. And there are some thoughts that maybe actually colic might be a bit of overstimulation at the end of the day, but it also might be understimulation at the end of the day. So if you haven't kind of filled your baby's cup, so to speak, with what they need from a sensory point of view, they might be kind of dialing up and getting upset, and that's what colic could be.
Right.
But in terms of sleep, what we want to do is try and, kind of fill that sensory cup during the day, and we want to avoid what's kind of overstimulating them. So during the day, kind of, give them those activities, and then in that half an hour before bedtime, try and reduce anything that's just a bit too much. So you're helping them calm down for sleep.
So Andrea, can you give us a few examples of some of those senses?
Yeah, sure. So with adults, if I, like, say, for example, I'm quite sensitive to noise. So if I'm making dinner or thinking about what I want to make for dinner with my kids and they're going off in the corner or there's a loud car driving past my house, I kind of notice I'm like a bit overwhelmed, a bit agitated.
Yeah, right.
And that's because I am more sensitive to noise than others. I'm kind of avoiding noise. As an adult, if I'm hungry, if the sun's in my eyes, if, the car radio's up too loud, never if it's 98.5.
Oh, good. Glad you in there.
Then I can remedy that. I can take the steps. I can get myself some food. I can put on some sunglasses. I can turn the volume down. Babies and toddlers can't do that,
Right.
and they need us to help them to do those things. And that's where it is important that we tune in. But how do we tune in? Like, what are we looking for? So if you're looking at, say, a little one who is quite, who they seem to be seeking movement, and how this might show up is like when they want to go to sleep, they want to be rocked, they want to be bounced. You hear about those parents who are sitting on the football.
Yes, or rocking the shopping centre trolley, like when you don't even have a child anymore. Like, that's probably why you get into that habit. Yep.
Yeah. So if you want to move away from that a little bit as a settling method, what you want to do is maybe try and give them those sensory experiences during the day. So that's that movement kind of sense. So things like piggyback rides, playing aeroplane games, whatever you can do to get that movement in, and obviously age-based as well. Like for a small baby, you're going to put them on their tummy, give them a bit of tummy time. For an older child, you might take them down the park and let them run around.
Yeah.
And trying to fill that sensory cup is going to help so that you're meeting those needs, and then that is not going to impact their nighttime sleep.
Yeah, perfect.
And then if you've got an avoider, it might be something like they don't like the noise. And so then you might either experiment with putting on a bit of white noise during sleep to block out the loud noises, or you might find actually white noise is just too much.
Right.
So I'm just going to turn it off and just try and keep everything quiet.
And even like darkness, or, if they prefer to be in a darker room or somewhere quiet away from everyone. And some kids, one of my children loved being in the noise. She settled better in noise than when it was really quiet.
Yeah.
So it's amazing how babies can be so different to each other.
Absolutely. So it's getting away. It's always getting away from the rules and the shoulds and tuning into your child and what their actual individual needs are.
It's fascinating. Like, babies, they're a fascinating little thing, and it's all about learning. So you've given us so much information today, which is going to be very helpful for a lot of people. So thanks so much for joining us today for Table Talk.
Thanks for having me.
That's Andrea. This is Andrea Fallon from Wholehearted Family Health. And thank you for joining us for another Table Talk. I hope you enjoyed the conversation, and you can check out more Table Talk episodes on our website, 98five.com. We'll see you next time.